since we're in person, we can do introductions today. That'd be really nice. I'm Jen Coleman, Mayor for the City of Norton and Chair.
Bart Vanderwall, Senator Vanderwall, Legal Counsel to the Stewardship Council.
Randy Mormon, Arvada City Council.
Jeanette Hillary, League of Women Voters.
Linda Porter, League of Women Voters.
Bill Fisher, City Goal.
I'm Bob McCool, Town of Superior.
Laurel Farzam, City of Northland.
Shelley Stanley, City of Northwood.
Trina Nance, City of Westminster staff.
Rich Seymour, Westminster City Council.
Caleb Owen, City of Thornton staff.
Nick Robles, staff, Boulder County.
Jacob Moyer, City of Arvada staff.
Roman Kohler, Rocky Flats Homestead.
Claire Levy, Boulder County Commissioner. Kim Griffiths, citizen of Arvada and citizen member of board.
I'm Pat O'Connell,
And I'm David Abelson, Executive Director.
Should we have the audience introduce themselves as well?
Hi, I'm Dave Connolly with the Environmental Protection Agency.
Travis Kelly, New Club, Boulder.
Brian Walker, CDPHE.
Lynn Siegel, ultrasound technologist from Seattle mostly, and Palo Alto, and Boulder now.
I'm Emerald Thomas, and I'm representing myself, and I also work for the Rocky Mountain Peace and Justice Center.
I'm Karen McShay. I work with RSI, contractor to DOE.
Ryan Wisniewski with RSI, contractor to DOE.
I'm Andy Kime. I'm with DOE, Office of Legacy Management.
Alicia Casey, Candela Sclose.
Laura Hubbard, City and County of Broomfield.
Bob Cleek, just a citizen.
John Boylan, RSI, contractor to DOE.
Patrick Benson, Department of Energy, Office of Legacy Management.
I'm Dana Santi, RSI, contractor, DOE.
Harry Bolton, RSI, contractor to DOE.
Lisa Bade, RSI, contractor to DOE.
Chris
DOE.
Alder.
DOE.
Chris Allred from Longmont, Colorado.
Thank you. All right, are there any questions from the board about the agenda this morning? All right, first item is public comments. These are the comments limited to the consent agenda and non-agenda items, and comments are limited to 3 minutes. Is there anyone that is interested in speaking? All right, looks like we have two. Lynn, you want to go 3? Lynn, you want to go first?
Sure. So, one of my big concerns here is the fact that plutonium could have possibly gotten into Marshall Lake. As Travis has told me, his dad indicated to him there was some dumping in 1979. And, you know, plutonium, spontaneous igniter, you know, doesn't mix with water. So during the Marshall Fire, the lake was on fire. Like, the fact that, and I went through there with my bike. I even rode my bike yesterday in the snow, successfully, carefully. And going through there and seeing one house burnt and another house not. Part of that is, of course, the wind, the velocity was so great, and the wind tunneling and the, you know, can do some weird things. But I don't doubt that plutonium particulates could have been involved as they evaporate, as the lake evaporates and the evaporation, you know, disperses. My dad was an air pollution control advocate at the Federal Aviation Administration in DC. He saw the HEPA filters were pointed the wrong direction, you know, to collect true good, you know, samples. Going way back, he's dead now, he died in 2010. But yeah, I mean, my mom got leukemia in 1957 when they lived in Denver downwind right before we moved to Boulder. We were coming from Aerojet, he's in aerospace industry, which is in Fair Oaks or in Sacramento area, moving to Boulder, and lived in Denver shortly, just at that critical time of 57. And, you know, you get one particulate, it doesn't mean your whole family's going to get it. And then you show up with a leukemia in Seattle 12 years later. And I can't prove anything, but that's my feeling, is that my mom was killed from this. And she wasn't even in World War II, like my dad was a navigator in World War II, you know. So the collateral damage is extreme. And like, I just want the flats closed down, like, it's bad enough, there's nothing we can do to a certain extent because geographic, major earthquakes or winds or fire, I just don't, I want everything that's possibly secured of that area as it can be, and certainly not people walking around there or, you know, just, yeah. So that's what I'm here for. It's the same time for years and decades now. But I really need my mom now, and this was in 1969. My dad lost his job at Boeing on the supersonic transport that same year. You know, like, this can be devastating, you know, and it's not, I'm in the medical profession because of it.
3 minutes are over. Thank you.
Thanks.
Chris?
Good morning, Council. My name is Chris Allred from Longmont, Colorado, and I'll be recording the meeting today. This is the third time I've recorded this meeting, and I would like to ask politely again, please, for this council to make arrangements for a new location where recording equipment is available for this to be recorded for the public record. And I have not given up hope that this council will do so. I hope to bring a positive message today. I know that I listened to the news on the way over, and I think we really are in need of a positive message these days. For those who've also listened to the news, it's very troubling. But alas, I still see some problems with the way this council operates. And I hope that members of the board will continue to step up and make improvements. And I would like to focus on one in particular today for this public comment. I also brought it up at the September meeting. I'm very concerned that the new website deleted the record of public comments at this Stewardship Council. I think that was not right. It's a horrible thing to do, actually, to delete the record of public comments. That is a critical part of this Stewardship Council's mission. As I understand, I'll read it here to make sure everyone is on the same page. A part of this council's mission is to provide an ongoing mechanism to help maintain public knowledge of Rocky Flats. Now, where does deleting the record of public comments fit into that mission? Can anyone please explain that to me? I would ask that someone on the council please put it to a vote here today. Let's see. Who here would like to see those public comments reinstated? I think it's difficult sometimes for this council to take action. And like I said, I want to bring a positive message today. I don't want to be always bringing up problems, but that is a serious problem. What are the members of this board to do when there's new members to this board? How are you supposed to know what has happened previously? Well, all the comments are deleted. It's the burden on the public to keep bringing it up again and again. That's not right. So, again, I have not given up hope, and
Thank you, Chris. Your time is up.
okay, thank you.
Thank you for your positive message, Chris. This meeting has failed its objectives. Now it is moving the goalposts. I'm here to call the bluff. Instead of providing a point of local public engagement between shareholders of Rocky Flats and private citizens concerned about Rocky Flats post-cleanup, this meeting has become the end point and still point of an urgent conversation about emergency management and fire readiness in the state of Colorado. For the sake of the status quo, David Abelson wants to keep these other urgent discussions in an unrelated box, unrelated to the famously egregious public safety record of Rockwell International and Dow Chemical before them during the operation of the Rocky Flats weapons facility. Why? Because the findings will not delight our fire marshals. Some of you were at the executive board meeting where David Abelson hilariously tried to noodle his mission into a new achievable objective for the next work plan, in which public engagement will, I'm sure, be mysteriously revoked. He claims that we, the public, are trolls, and his underlings call us terrorists.
Excuse me, hang on. Can you pause the time?
Wait.
No, wait.
Wait.
Stop.
Wait.
No trolls, no underlings. Come on, be fair, Travis.
Let me continue.
No,
He
be
has
fair.
just 3
What
minutes.
is, we paused his
3
time.
minutes.
Let me continue.
If you
We
disagree,
paused
you
your time.
disagree.
Let me continue.
Explain that.
So we will have, let's.
We
I
asked
have
for
no
no
more
personal
menacing in this
attacks. You
meeting.
can't
I don't need
not
anybody
do
yelling
that.
at me. Please let me continue.
You can continue, but please no personal attacks.
We asked for that many times.
I'm asking for no personal attacks. I'm not a terrorist. I'm not a troll.
And I don't believe anyone has ever called you that in this group.
He claims the public he says we're flouting reality in the age of misinformation, Kim Griffiths.
That's correct.
So how grand, but how untrue that is.
No, that's very true.
So here's your point of contention, David. I hope that's settled. I am handing out a small packet that I will be referring to during the election. Mr. Kine. The first document is an advisory notice. The second and third documents are public comments that I have made to the website. On October 26th, my comment, which is listed first, was rejected, just like last year. Exactly 1 year ago, I had made a public comment that had been rejected, and I pointed out to the website that it wasn't working. I had to do that again on October 26th. David told me, I don't see what the problem is. Everything seems to be working fine. And that's not true. I put in another comment last night on October 29th, and that comment did go through. So I want you to see how it is from our perspective that someone's playing puppet strings over whether or not even the website will accept our public comments. Draconian David Abelson, who does not make decisions on behalf of the board according to the mayor of Thornton,
Thank you.
chose to cut the public comments. I've included them in this packet
And
for
your time is up.
2010.
Yes, thank you. All right, our next item is business items, the consent agenda. Any questions about the minutes or the checks?
I would request the spelling of my name be corrected. It's EY.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Shelley, how many years have we made that mistake? Too many.
It comes and goes.
No, it's like hit or miss.
Any other changes to the minutes? Can I get a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Members of the board only. Next is the checks. Can I get a motion to approve the checks?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. All right, executive director's report.
So, this is, although she's not here today because of COVID, this is Melissa Weekly's last meeting with the Stewardship Council. I sent you her resignation letter. Melissa was actually her first job out of grad school. I hired her with the Rocky Flats Coalition. And so she was with us for maybe 3 or 4 years, got married, traveled the world. That's when Rick came in, and when Rick retired, then Melissa took over. And I'm gonna miss her. She's an asset. She's smart. She's interested, she's engaged, she's intelligent, and we'll talk more when we go into executive session, some of the reasons as to sort of some of the background that's not, that's more personal to her. But I did want to acknowledge that. She's out with COVID, and also Devin's not here with COVID, so everyone just stay healthy. Barb has sent out the stuff for the intergovernmental agreements. If you have any questions, please contact her. We need the triennial review to keep this organization as it evolves moving forward, and so that's why that triennial review is so important. Final thing I wanted to mention was a couple of weeks ago I attended and spoke at a technical meeting of the International Atomic Energy Agency. The focus of the meeting was stakeholder engagement, and it was around nuclear sites. In the United States, the contingent from the US were around Department of Energy former weapons facilities, and then those from the rest of the world, except for Sellafield in England, were from nuclear power sites. It was extremely interesting. I had not been involved in that nature of an international dialogue before. There were attendees from, obviously, the US, South America, Asia, Africa, Europe. I ended up serving on 2 panels, and we also had a meeting with the Director General Grassi while we were there, who is extremely sharp, very, very impressive. The first panel focused on the difference between what is a stakeholder and an interested party, right? That important distinction between having a stake in something and having an interest in something. That was particularly interesting as you looked at that concept through different cultural lenses. And so that was more sort of complex conversation than I expected. And then the second panel that I was on focused on coalition building, obviously something we know about here. As part of this, I attended a meeting as part of the Global Partnership. It's organizations from the US, Canada, and Europe. And there were really, through all of that, there were sort of 4 central takeaways for Rocky Flats. First one is that the level of elected official engagements that we have here is unusual. Do not take it for granted. You're not seeing this type, I mean, you don't see it here in the United States, but you don't see it worldwide. You don't get this kind of coalition of local governments coming together. And that really struck me. So don't underestimate how important this focus is. And when we met with the Director General Grassi, one of the things he emphasized was the importance of municipal engagement on solving issues related to nuclear sites, whether he was talking more about energy sites, we were talking more about weapons sites, but the importance of municipal engagement. So that's the first thing. Second thing that became very clear is that over time, the loss of institutional knowledge is a real concern. And it's a challenge. It's really that idea of knowledge transfer. Knowledge transfer is hard. It's very difficult. You on councils, I'm sure all the time you look at it and say, well, why did the prior council make this decision? What was their thinking? And it's that loss of institutional knowledge, usually maintained at a staff level because they have the longevity. But just overall, that's a major challenge. Third thing, and this one really surprised me how universal it was that you see a small group of constituents seeking to commandeer the broader public narrative. And I wasn't expecting that. And the message that kept coming through was that the small group is not necessarily reflective of a broader community values and priorities. And they spoke of interesting tactics that you see here in the United States as well. Misinformation, personal attacks, and then they also spoke of the groups that would just say no, regardless of what the issue was. So that commonality, right, for people, and it was interesting in that particular conversation. It was Argentina, it was Kenya, and outside of Toronto, I can't remember the name of that little town, or that city, that town there. But that was very interesting, that part of the conversation. And the fourth thing, which you all know so well, is that when it comes to social media, from a political standpoint, the best you can really hope for is a draw. That if you're actually trying to think that with social media you can actually quote unquote win, You're never going to win in those situations. You're never, as soon as the word, particularly when it's something like the word nuclear comes in, you will never win, ever. So all you can hope for is a draw, and that led to an interesting conversation that isn't even worth it. So that was interesting in there. So those were the 4 main takeaways from these meetings that I thought were applicable to life here at Rocky Flats. So that's my report. Any questions? And then Barb, do you have anything on the IGA?
The IGA, we've circulated the memo that describes the IGA, the 3-year review for continuation of the entity and a proposed form of resolution that can be adopted by your jurisdiction. And we're trying to collect those, have them take place at your upcoming meetings by the end of January, end of January. Any questions, certainly reach out to our office. And we'll follow up in the next month or two with circulations for appointments for your director and alternate seats, which will also come due by the end of January for the February board meeting.
Any questions for Barb or for David? All right, we'll move on to the 2024 work plan.
Okay, so you all have the work plan. And the only real change is the big topic we talked about, which principally involved the conversation with Randy and Devin. Devin's not here today, as I mentioned. We went in the executive committee meeting a few weeks ago, we went over in detail this provision. Because what I wanted to make sure that even down to, do I have all the correct punctuation, that's the level of detail we delved into. Does this have the support of the executive committee and other board members who were on the call? And so the answer is yes. So what I wanted to do is, since everything else is just status quo from the last meeting, I wanted to see if there's any questions you have about this section of the work plan before we go on to a broader discussion of the work plan. And just board members jump in.
Thank you for this, and apologies for the last meeting. My internet went out right after I made my comment, so I had to go back and watch the whole thing, but I did watch the rest of the meeting, and I really appreciate the conversation. I think the one thing that, and it maybe doesn't go in the work plan, but I would certainly like us to consider as to how we implement this, and that is, given that we're going to have new members coming on in February, I think 2 things that would be really useful. One is onboarding of those new members, and I think we've talked about onboarding before, but me being relatively new, coming on 2 years ago, I really felt I didn't get much onboarding. So I hope that we're thinking proactively about that this time and what that might look like. And then from that too, I think, most of all our jurisdictions go through some sort of strategic retreat planning kind of process. And so I think this calls that out. For me at least, I would like to see us be really intentional in how we implement this to at least start with some sort of strategic planning retreat that's just dedicated to that, and carve out that time at the beginning of 2024. Because I think that will set us up to do this kind of work and make sure that we get it started at least in 2024. Because my concern is, as was shared, I think, at the last meeting about we only meet 4 times a year, and getting things moving and going takes probably too long. And so I think we're going to need to carve out extra time if we really want this to happen. And so that would be my request.
Other comments or questions from the board?
I just, point of clarification. So it doesn't have to be specifically in the work plan, but we could have it on the agenda for our February meeting to get into, do some training, onboarding stuff, and as well as how to implement some of the work plan. I just want to clarify that. Okay.
Just quickly on the onboarding, one of the things I'm really sensitive to is that each government needs something that's different. And so part of where I struggle is to say, okay, how does Randy, when you came on, differ from Bill, right? Just to pick 2 people that are in my division. And then I think of when Andy came on, and I knew Pat was briefing him. So I think when I look at it, I think there's a different process for each person because there's different needs. So the only thing I would request is just a flexibility to say, let's look at each of the governments individually and let me work with staff to say, how do we bring your person on?
I think we could do a 101 at the February meeting, because we're gonna have new members, because there's new elections coming. And then just kind of a history of the council and our expectations, and then an expectation of each of the members to reach out to their staff member that has that history, because that's the same thing when I came on. You came on in the middle of COVID, so it was a completely different situation, but when I came on, gosh, it was probably 8 years ago, there wasn't much onboarding then, but I sat down with my staff and had them walk me through the history and all the things that they had done, which was extremely helpful, but I didn't do it until after a couple of meetings when I was confused. So maybe the 101 starts with, here's our history from our perspective, and then end it with, you need to meet with your staff and talk to them. I think that would be really helpful, and then after that, talk about the expectations for the work plan.
And what I've done is I've added that to the big picture, so when we get there, I'll flag it from that point.
And something else to add. So Jefferson County is also working on a document and for onboarding, but for really trying to cover everyone, residents, new staff, and elected officials, about Rocky and the council itself, because they actually run parallel for a bit. So I was hoping I was going to have something for this meeting. Turns out it's a bigger project than anticipated. So our IT department's working on that, so it should certainly happen prior to February. We'll send it out. It's meant to be a draft, dynamic document. It's updated.
Are you guys using story maps for that?
We are.
Excellent.
It's and the idea is that someone can drill in as much as they want. If they want the technical details, there'll be a path for that too. And if they want high level, it's there too.
So this is for all the towns and cities within Jefferson County?
It's for not just Jefferson County, it's for everyone, right? The whole idea is like big picture. So I think David's correct. Like each jurisdiction need might be a little bit different, but not at the start, right? Just okay, what happened at Rocky? What was going on there in that process? And really, the intent is to have it give as much data as the user wants. It'll be a great tool, at least in my head. It is right now. It'll be a great tool.
It's good.
Any other questions about the work plan? Can I get a motion to approve the work plan for 2024?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Thank you, the work plan is approved. All right, next is the 2024 budget.
So, do you want to explain the hearings process?
Sure. So the Stewardship Council is a political subdivision, a unit of local government, and is subject to the local government budget laws. Requires to hold a hearing, requires a draft budget be circulated. It requires you to adopt your budget following a hearing by the end of the year. This being your last meeting scheduled for this year, this would be the time frame to do it. David can present the budget, but we do have a resolution for approval that's been included in your meeting materials and execution.
So do I talk about the budget, then we do the hearing, and then it goes to the board?
There's not a right or wrong answer, so it's really what works best for you. I think it's helpful to present it, allow for comments, and then in public hearing timeframe, close the hearing, and then have the board discuss and take action. And I didn't mention the notice of this meeting was additionally published in the newspaper.
All right, so I'll officially open the budget hearing. We'll allow for a presentation, we'll allow for questions from the board, we'll open for public comment, same rules apply, 3 minutes, and then we'll close the public hearing, and then take a motion.
So the budget is the same one presented to you at the last meeting with the one notable change on the top of page 2 under local government expenses. That was increased by $10,000 from 2,000 to 10,000. with the idea that there could be potentially hiring of a company to help with communications. It's same budget that you received last time.
Any questions from the board?
I mean, I'm wondering even to have, like, back to my comment about the work plan and having a strategic planning time set aside, to even have an outside facilitator for that. So I'm wondering, you know, I don't know what that would cost, but is that something for us to consider?
No, I haven't thought about it.
I think it could be something that could be considered at the February meeting, after we do the 101 and the initial conversation. If we felt we need more, we could add it. We could do a budget amendments next year.
That's,
I can't imagine that a meeting facilitator would cost so much that it would actually change the overall budget number. Right? Ultimately, the only number that matters is the bottom line. As long as you don't exceed it, you're fine. You guys control the big expenses. You know, if you say, hey, we're gonna devote X to facilitator, then we do that. We don't have to have a budget line item to do that. We're not, you know, it's not that kind of budget. So I do not anticipate a situation where that type of need would in any way result in need for supplemental hearings. So I think we'd be okay.
is there a vacancy saving from Melissa's departure?
We're gonna talk later.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it, you know, if we really want to be intentional about this, I think I've always found it helpful to have an outside facilitator who doesn't know the nuts and bolts of what we're doing, to really have that perspective to kind of walk us through a productive process.
Any other questions? All right, I'll open it for public comments. So same rules. You can, if you'll raise your hand, let me know you want to speak, and then you'll get 3 minutes. Travis?
$2,510.44 for the new website, which is a whitewash. So I think that I want to urge all of you to make careful review of the budget decisions being made. No, I'm talking about the website expenses
From last year?
for this year that just happened.
Is that on the budget sheet?
No, the website build was 2023. This is the 2024 budget.
Okay, well, the amount is still a large amount for this meeting to offer less to the public, paid more for fewer documents to be available to the public. And so I think this needs to be scrutinized very carefully, and I thank Randy Moorman for his comments. That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else want to make a comment on the budget? Chris?
Well, thank you for the time to comment on the budget. I also thank Councilman Moorman for his comments about onboarding and having some outside facilitation. I think that would be helpful. And I just sense the tone in the room even. It seems hard to have a discussion. It seems like there aren't many responses, not a lot of back and forth. People don't know how to move this forward. And in regards to the budget, I would urge the council not to approve the budget. I don't think that it's ready. And this is coming from well over 100 public comments since June, identifying a conflict of interest with funding from the Department of Energy. $155,000 out of $182,000 of this budget is from the Department of Energy. That is a conflict of interest. I will continue to bring that up because it needs to be addressed. That's 85% of the budget that is going to the executive director, and this council is operating under the influence of the Department of Energy, which is the same agency responsible for nuclear bomb production, same agency responsible for the contamination at Rocky Flats. And that's not right. It's excluding the public. My comment this morning about the public comments, that hasn't been addressed today. And I think it's very problematic that this budget continues to be funded by the Department of Energy. And so I ask you to please not approve the budget. Thank you.
Any other comments on the budget?
You know, Chris reminds me, so many of these meetings, there's not a robust conversation. There's dead silence. And you know what? We could have a nuclear event any minute. You know what happened? Yesterday, Israeli plane out of Tel Aviv went to a Russian autonomous area.
So we have to focus on the
And the
2024
airport was
budget.
flooded with people. They weren't gonna let them, a Russian
We have to
autonomous
focus
area.
on the 2024
And that's what
budget.
we're talking about. We're talking about plutonium, we're talking about bombs, we're
Just
talking
3
about
minutes.
World War III. And I love all of you, because this might be the last moment we see each other. This is serious business going on in Israel-Palestine, and we don't need war anymore. And you know what it's called?
Comments about
Does
the
anyone
budget.
know what terroir is?
Can you please stop now? This is not the
This
subject.
is my
This is offending
time,
me right
Nora.
now.
This
Lynn,
is
it's
my
not.
time.
The time is to talk about the 2024 budget.
Right, and I agree with Chris, and I agree with Travis, and the problem is, we're spending the 2024 budget on a disaster that we caused because we're fighting. We have evolved beyond this. We don't need to fight anymore. It's called terroir. If you've ever heard the expression terroir, it's the taste of a food that comes from the environment that it's grown in.
So Lynn,
Terroir,
focus on the 2024
terroir,
budget.
not terror. Get it? And that's all about the budget because it all comes to the bottom line. And that's from my Jewish side, my dad's side. That's
All right,
where
I'm gonna
I'm
ask you to sit
cheap.
down. Your time is
And
up.
that's where the money's
Focus is on
involved.
the budget. Thank you.
Cut it. I mean, we need to fix this.
Thank you very much.
But it's a problem that we're budgeting for this
All
kind
right,
of stuff.
I'm going to close the public comments and close the public hearing.
Thank you
Before I
for
close the hearing, Are there any
listening.
additional questions from the board? All right, I'll close the public hearing. Can I please get a motion on the 2024 budget?
Second.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded to approve the 2024 budget. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Thank you. The budget passes. Next item is new member selection. So we have 4 entities that have applied for membership, and we will interview each of them. They will give it an opportunity to give an overview. Do we have a time limit for their introductions? 3 minutes, just like public comment? So you have 3 minutes to introduce yourself. The board can ask questions, and then after we interview all 4, we will open the floor for nominations to approve the board membership.
So what we'll do is Jeanette speak and Linda speak from there, Roman speak from there, and then I'm gonna put a chair there for Emmy and then for Travis. Or if you guys wanna come up front, actually, why don't you come up front and that'll make it easier for Chris to film. So why don't you guys just speak from your seats and then you guys will come up here.
Should we start with the League of Women Voters?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Jeanette Hillary, and this is Linda Porter. We're with the League of Women Voters. We have been honored to be able to be participating with the Stewardship Council since its inception. And prior to the closure, we were involved with discussions and groups that were involved in it. I facilitated meetings, public meetings on the facility that the League had held around in the area. We feel we have some good working knowledge, scientifically and publicly, on the site. And that we've been able to continue our consistency and attendance and participate in all of our meetings, and we've seen the change of tide. We've encouraged, obviously, I'm with Randy on the air quality. I know right where I was sitting when I encouraged air quality monitoring a long time ago after the fire. So, you know, we have a lot of common interests with all of the communities. I like the respect that the communities have developed for each other, because I think that was a very different approach to dealing with a really touchy area. It's like an intergovernmental agreement and looking at issues that approach, you know, a region. And I think the respect that was developed among the communities and their different approaches to Rocky Flats, I think has been really helpful. And we'd be glad to take any questions that you might have.
All right, questions from the board? Rich?
Yes, Ms. Hillary, thank you, both you and Ms. Porter, for putting your name in. I'd like to ask, from your perspective as resident citizens, what do you think is perhaps an unmet need that this board is not satisfying?
I think that there's a difficulty in separating out the refuge from the central operating unit and understanding that those two areas are under different federal auspices. So I do think that there's that. I feel that we're sort of in some ways a holding pattern as far as what's happening at the COO, the Central Operating Unit, which is what this group is supposed to be looking at. And I think we've been on top of when there have been issues and looking at new approaches to handling any kind of contamination. I think one of the problems that I do see is that when there's also a turnover on the board from the elected officials, that there's a gap on learning and that bringing everybody up to speed and understanding on who's responsible for the COO, who's responsible for the refuge, what does it actually mean when you get readings at discharge points, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I would agree that that's an issue, and certainly when we have limited numbers of meetings, and someone, as Randy I think pointed out, that bringing new people on board and getting up to speed, then that slows some of our progress down. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? I'll ask one. Can you, in a sentence, say what the purpose of the Rocky Flats Stewardship Council is?
I think that the purpose of the Stewardship Council is to be, in essence, a steward for the site that was a nuclear trigger plant, and to continue its maintenance in ensuring that nothing ever gets built there, and that there's ongoing maintenance on the site.
All right. Thank you. You ready for the next one? All right, Roman, representing the
Hi,
Rocky Flats.
my name's Roman Kohler. With the Rocky Flats Homesteaders. The Homesteaders is a former employee organization that was started back in the mid-'80s. And after I worked out there for 27 years. After I retired in '95, I started attending meetings about the closure operations. That was at the Riffclod back in '95, and as soon as the Stewardship Council was formed, I applied for membership here, and I've been on the board since it was originally chartered. our reason for being on the board, of course, is to inform the former workers about what is going on with the plant site, where we all had so many years of employment there. I do produce a newsletter for the homesteaders that goes out 4 times a year, and I do have articles in there about the happenings with the Stewardship Council, and I keep the former workers pretty much informed of what's going on. The council has assisted us, the former workers, in an issue quite a few years ago with the compensation program that was being administered through the Department of Labor for people who have illnesses from their exposures during their working years. There was a decision process about how many years of employment was necessary to receive benefits, and the Stewardship Council did, as a group, send letters out to support the former workers. And I want to continue on with the our membership here to keep the former workers, which are many of your constituents from the communities here, because that's where all the workers came from. You know, Golden, Arvada, Boulder, you know, Northland, Westminster. You know, we all have got a lot of our lives right here. And I'm ready to answer any questions about the plant as far as my employment out there, and any information, any background information anybody would like to have.
Thank you. All right, open for questions. Do you want to ask the same one, Rich?
Sure. Mr. Kohler, thank you. I've gotten to know you when we did the tour last spring, and I appreciate your participation. So I'd like to ask the same question that I asked Ms. Hillary and Porter, and that is, what are some unmet needs that you think that this Stewardship Council can start to focus on?
Well, I think David has kept us focused pretty much from the very beginning on our oversight of the activities that are being performed by the contractors out there. And I think it's important that we do continue to receive that information. So if we need more studies, we can request that by asking a question. We can't give them orders, but we can ask questions. And I think that's a good thing. We continue that detail of the work that's being done, the detail of the exposures in groundwater and surface water is important to the entire communities because of our, the safety of our drinking water.
Okay, thank you.
I'll ask the same one as well. In a sentence, can you tell us the purpose of the Stewardship Council?
Well, as I mentioned, it is oversight, as it's been, dictated by Congress when they funded the council, and there's pretty much, I think, uniform with the councils that are at many of the other nuclear operations, and just oversight, and so that the communities can feel assured that drinking water and air is being addressed. They're being informed about what is happening. That's our job, to let the public know about it. Yes.
Any other questions from the board? All right, I think we're ready for the next one. I think Emmy Thomas.
gain more knowledge and more perspective and more information about what's happening and what has happened at Rocky Flats. I started working for the Rocky Mountain Peace and Justice Center back in March, and I have been given a ton of information about like nuclear weapons development and what has happened at Rocky Flats and what is happening at Rocky Flats, and I have been thinking about what to do with all of this information. And I think as an individual, I want to gain more perspective, and I think that this Stewardship Council is a really unique, I don't know, like system of governance that I would like to participate in to gain more perspective, because that's essentially what I think the purpose of the Stewardship Council is to inform, and it's like oversight over the site, and then also to inform people about it. And I think I represent, like at the Rocky Mountain Peace and Justice Center, I'm expected to know a lot of information about what is happening at Rocky Flats. I have a lot of questions given to me, and I am not able to answer those questions. So I'm here to apply to try and get more perspective so that I can answer those questions.
Thank you. Questions?
I'm gonna ask my canned question, not a surprise. But obviously you don't know a lot, and that's why you're interested, and I appreciate you applying. I'm gonna kind of put a little bit of a variation on the theme here. Clearly it's a steep learning curve, very technical.
Yes.
And so, what do you expect to be able to understand or learn, kind of getting this exposure, if you will, to something that's very technical?
I think I want a realistic perspective of how to mitigate like nuclear weapons production. Like I want to understand what has happened like realistically from the technical side, so that when people ask like what realistically like is it safe, and I can go into the technical side on that. So yeah, getting more into the weeds on it.
And when you say nuclear weapons production, there's no more production
No,
triggers.
no, there is also, like, in our organization, like, the preservation of institutional knowledge is something that I'm interested in creating an evolution of, to understand, like, there's no more nuclear weapons production, and, like, how do we separate that with facts and knowledge and information?
Thank you.
And you already answered my question. Any other questions from the board? Thank you very much. All right, and the fourth person is Travis with U Club.
Member from Superior. I just want to hand you this. This is my notes for the election from last year. Superior voted for me. I'm hoping to retain your vote.
Good morning again. My name is Travis Cully. I represent a group called New Club Boulder. It's a club. It's not important to get into the weeds of whether or not I'm going to be here as an individual or as an organization, because the position of this group, this club, the people of my ilk, think that this meeting is not real. I would like your vote. Just because I imagine that the IGA is going to be signed by at least 9 members, and I think it shouldn't be. We need to have someone on this council, God forbid it goes forward, to help keep the steering true. New Club Boulder is a collective of points of view who are going to be comprehensive about the positions, radical and otherwise, conservative or politicized or not politicized. All thoughts about Rocky Flats and how they relate to Colorado wildfires. Now, I think we need to pay attention to the fact that nuclear radiological events lead to fires. And on the morning of December 30th, 2022, there are 2021, there are satellite readings of the Marshall Fire in which heat signatures were captured by these satellites before the fire began at, say, 11:09 a.m. These heat signatures, if you look at the back of your packets, I have a YouTube thread there, and there's an image. This is a visualization from the video that's included there. And that image on the back of your pamphlet is at 3:10 a.m. It's reading heat signatures around Marshall Mesa at 3:10 a.m. Let me stop and get a little perspective. The Rocky Flats Stewardship Council, to answer your question ahead of time, is a tool to disseminate information to shareholders, LSOs, about the post-closure management of the COU. The Stewardship Council has no power to advise or to make suggestions, nor to seek consensus. It shall not edit or comment on public comments that have been sent to the Stewardship Council. This is my restatement of what Susan Beard says. In the public comments that I have included in your packet, all those public comments are gone. Susan Beard's discussion with Leroy Moore on whether or not this council has any legitimacy at all, whether or not it's legal, is included in your packets. I'm going to follow up with the other public comments that were erased from the website at my own effort, my own financing, and my own time.
Introduction isn't worth.
So your public comments, David, will not be lost.
All right, board, are there any questions from the board before you leave?
Mr. Coley, I'm confused. It seems like you want to join a board that you don't believe is legitimate. So I wonder if you can kind of help me square that, because I'm really having a hard time.
I would absolutely I would calm down enormously if anyone from this group can help me figure out where these heat signatures off-site of the COU, what they are made of, how they operate. DOE in the back, Andy Kime. I mean it in.
I don't think you're answering the question. Why are you interested in applying to the board that think it's illegitimate?
Because I think it's illegitimate, and I would rest my case when I found its legitimacy, sir.
So when you join, let's play forward.
Yeah.
What are some of the things you're going to do?
Well, I'm going to open up this conversation about the LSO and non-LSO spaces. I think I can help bring some light to what's confusing in that situation. The fact is that this Stewardship Council is only a scarecrow in a field, and it has no opinion, even as these honorary members are from different cities and counties around the area. The presumption of this meeting is that you're being a stakeholder only to the central operating unit. Now, how is it that all of these regional bodies and minds come together and are somehow captured into being only stakeholders of the central operating unit? Anything outside of the central operating unit, in terms of the peripheral operating unit or the other operating units, these are all related to the very same thing. It has to do with the cleanup and post-closure activities of the DOE with legacy management, EPA, and not the Stewardship Council. It's important that we understand that.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate the answer.
I think you answered mine already. Any other questions from the board?
Please, anybody.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so let me explain how the process works. It's really simple. It's the government's only. You each have 2 votes. There's 10 of you, but there's no, hang on, there's no Boulder, no, we got Boulder, there's no Broomfield. We got Boulder County. Okay, so we're just missing Broomfield. So there's 9 votes today. You each will get 2, and then at the end of the first round, if there are 2 winners, then those are the ones who are appointed starting in February. And if there's a tie, then we'll get a vote on that tie. I don't imagine there's going to be 3 that are tied for seconds. Just guessing. So I put them in order as, and then since it's mostly in Jefferson County, so then I went counties, and then it just was the randomness of my mind as I'm trying to write down the governments while talking to people at the start of the meeting. So I'm gonna, well, you can see the order, I'll just call out, you tell me who your votes are, I'll mark it off. I'm doing it this way so that in case there's a mistake, you guys can see real time if I'm making a mistake, and then everyone can see real time what the vote is. Any questions on the process? Okay. Jan.
All right, so as the chair, I'll go first. First of all, thank you for everyone for participating today. Thank you for reapplying both Roman and the League of Women Voters. Thank you to the members of the public that have come to the meetings and have wanted to learn more. Very much appreciate that. I think the beginning of the conversation, we had a lot of talk about institutional knowledge and how the elected officials turn over often. And I feel like the League of Women Voters and the Rocky Flat Homesteaders bring that institutional knowledge and continuous discussion, and so those are my 2 votes.
Okay, no Broomfield, Jefferson County.
League of Women Voters and Rocky Flats Homesteaders.
Thank you. Boulder County.
Yeah, I think the chair stated very well the role of the League of Women Voters and Flats Homesteaders has served, and so I cast my votes also for the League of Women Voters.
Okay. Arvada.
Yes, the Women Voters and Rocky Flat Homesteaders for the same reasons already stated.
City of Boulder.
I vote for the League of Women Voters and the Rocky Flats the Homesteaders, but I just want to say, Travis, that I appreciate your pushback on what happened in the Marshall fires, and I hope that you continue to do that work.
Thank you.
Superior.
League of Women Voters and Rocky Flats Homesteaders for the reasons I already stated.
North Glen.
League of Women Voters and Ms. Thomas.
Westminster.
League of Women Voters and Rocky Flats Homesteaders. I believe the institutional knowledge is critical.
And Golden.
I would agree with that. League of Women Voters and Rocky Flats Homesteaders.
Did I miss anything? Did I miss any governments? Did I get anything wrong? Okay, so we have 9 for the League, 8 for the Homesteaders, and 1 for Emmy. So those are the appointments, and those will be effective.
Motion?
No, because
Is
it's, yeah, because you have to have the board, and you can't have the non-governmental members voting for themselves. So that's why it's board appointment, elected official appointments.
All right.
Any questions about that? Particularly that last part? Okay.
Thank you all very much. All right, next is the DOE quarterly meeting.
Who's up first for you guys?
George will speak first.
Summer, we could have been coming here easily.
I spent years trying to make sure I could get up this morning. You know, we planned that 6 months ago. I think they'll be able to see the screen. Do you need to pull the table back, Lisa?
I think we're okay.
It's cold.
No, it feels warm.
It's frozen.
It says on. You're gonna have to sit there and press the button. Yeah. Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name's George Squibb. I'm the Surface Water Lead at the Rocky Flat site. I work for the Legacy Management Subcontractor, RSI. And RSI is responsible for the stewardship maintenance at the Rocky Flat site. The Rocky Flats Legacy Management Agreement between CDPHE, EPA, and the Department of Energy requires, one of the things it requires is that we provide updates on what we're doing at the site. So we're here today to talk about, give you a brief update of on the second quarter report. So that's April, May, and June of this last summer. You can also, for a lot more detail, you can find that report on the Rocky Flats website, the DOE Rocky Flats website, if you want to read the whole thing. Okay. So I'll start out telling you about surface water monitoring, and then I think John Boylan's going to do groundwater, and then we got Harry and Karen Weeko today. So this is just a picture of actually our point of compliance wall pack on Walnut Creek at the boundary of the central operating unit. Go ahead. Today we're going to talk about these selected locations. The black outline is the outline of this, is the boundary of the central operating unit, which is the portion of the federal property that Department of Energy is responsible for. The surrounding area is the Rocky Flats National Wildlife Refuge. The two locations on the east side of the map are the most downstream locations. Those are our 2 points of compliance. On the north, Walpock on Walnut Creek, and the south is Wampac on Woman Creek. This next row of locations further upstream are kind of at the boundary where the former industrial area used to be, and those are our points of evaluation. We use those to look for any kind of emerging issues that could potentially impact water quality at a later date downstream in our points of compliance. And then these last two here are our two locations that look for surface water impacts from the two closed landfills, the present landfill and the original landfill. Go to the next one. For our landfill performance monitoring, in Woman Creek, below the original landfill, all of our sampling showed concentrations that were below the applicable reference standards during the quarter. At the present landfill, all concentrations for boron were below the standard. Boron regularly exceeds the standard at this location. We've been working with CDPHE and EPA to develop a path forward. We just completed some additional sampling over the last year, looking at potential impacts to downstream water in Nonia Gulch. You can find those contact records on the website. We'll be meeting over the next couple of months and hopefully developing a path forward on that particular constituent at the DLF. Okay, let's go ahead. For our POEs, no concentrations, no 12-month rolling average concentrations for the quarter were reportable. Reportable means that the concentrations above the standard 12-month rolling average. Next slide. And the same at our points of compliance. No concentrations were reportable during the quarter. And that's Wampac. Looks kind of taken around the same day. We had 1 week or so in May where we had a fair amount of water this year. Any questions before John comes up? Okay, thanks.
Morning, everyone. My name is John Boylan. Like George, I'm with RSI, contractor to DOE, and I'm the groundwater lead, so I'll tell you about the groundwater and groundwater treatment system activities in April, May, June of 23. The photo there shows some of the work that was done in the field that quarter. We replaced the solar ponds plume treatment system discharge gallery. It's a subsurface gravel bed where the treated water is discharged back to the surface water. We replaced it because the original was overgrown with cattails and stuff. It had been installed in 1999 They require periodic maintenance, and maintenance is often not just cleaning a pipe, it's putting a new one in. So that's what this is. The pipe is perforated, it's in gravel, and then you cover it back up, and you'll see another picture of it in a few minutes. Next slide. There weren't any changes to the monitoring network. This is the same network we've had for many years. I don't know how many. It's been at least a decade, I would think. Next slide. In the second quarter, we sampled all of the RIFLAMA monitoring locations for groundwater except for the evaluation wells. Those are sampled in the second quarter of even-numbered years. They're located within source areas in the central operable unit. And since conditions don't change rapidly there's no point in sampling them more frequently. The results that we saw are what we've seen in prior years, and you'll see a lot more discussion of that in the annual report for 2023. Also, periodically, CDPHE will observe our monitoring activities in the field. That was done in this particular quarter, and EPA representative was also present. Both of them are at this meeting, and they brought some friends as well. So that was the 2023 observation. The last one was in 2021. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we did all of the monitoring locations with the exception of the evaluation wells. Those are the ones in pink on this figure. Also not shown on this figure, but which were monitored, are the treatment system locations. So all the other dots that you see there were monitored in this particular quarter. Next slide. This shows the what we call the SPPTS discharge gallery, solar pond plume treatment system discharge gallery after the work was done. It was then reseeded, and of course you don't see plants growing because it's just freshly finished. And we also completed the uranium treatment testing in May. That work has been ongoing since the smaller scale was last year, but this particular pilot scale treatments testing was begun last fall or winter, and that was concluded this particular quarter, and the treatment facility, or the testing facility, was removed. I think that's it. Next slide. Yeah, okay. Any questions? Oh, no questions yet, or yes questions? I shall.
Can you just tell me how much area was disturbed, approximately?
I can tell you approximately, yeah. And to be honest, I don't know. I would guess that it was...
Quarter acre or so?
Oh, less than that. I would say it's probably the width as you're looking at it here. So you're looking down the long axis. So the short axis, I would put it about 15 to 20 yards. And the long axis, maybe 40 to 50 yards or something like that.
And was the old pipe removed?
Yes. The old pipe, the old gravel, yes. Sure. Yes, Jeanette.
Where do you transport the old pipe and gravel?
It's actually currently residing in waste, like roll-off containers. We sampled it to get the waste characteristics, and then those data were submitted to the local landfill, and I don't know if it's been approved yet. That's somebody else is taking care of that. But that's the path forward. So the dirt and gravel and there's pieces of PVC and stuff that will go there upon approval, acceptance. Any other questions? Right. Thank you. Harry's next.
Good morning, everyone, and I'm Harry Bolton, and I'm with RSI. And this slide here is basically in response to last Stewardship Council meeting. We discussed the signage that we check and look at on a quarterly basis, and the question was asked, well, what do these signs say? What do they look like? So this is just kind of a mosaic of the signs we have out there. So you guys can take a look and kind of see what we have. The yellow sign up in the middle, that's all on the perimeter fence, and they face outside, so as you approach the site, you can read them. And they are really spaced so that wherever you're approaching one sign, you should be able to see other signs on either side. The idea being wherever you approach the coup from the refuge, you'll get this warning to that you're basically getting on government property, that it's Rocky Flat site, stay out. The other sites, or the other signs rather, there's one that lists the institutional controls. Those are basically what is listed in the RIFMA agreement. No one can live on the site. We can't dig within I think below 3 foot. We have to notify the state, federal. And then the other one is in case of emergency, who to call. And another one is just kind of a no trespassing site. So basically, all of these sites, as you go through the west gate and start to head towards the coup gate, this is what you'll see that just lets you know that unless you have official business there and the proper training and everything else, you shouldn't be there. Next slide, please.
Harry?
Yes.
Have these signs ever been altered, taken down, removed in any way?
Not that I know of. Now, there is one alteration, and that is on the signs that are on the perimeter fence. There was an old logo on there from LMS, and that logo has been changed, but we haven't gone out and updated the signs yet. But from the standpoint of what they say and what message they're delivering, there's no relevant change, there's no substantial change to that. It's just we've upgraded our logo.
Okay. And on your quarterly review, you're looking at them for what purpose?
Well, they basically will walk the entire perimeter fence, and you're looking for signs that have fallen, have been, are illegible, have been, or maybe just laying on the ground, or half askew, and those are then repaired or replaced as needed.
Thanks, Harry.
Question?
Sure.
The 877 phone number, is that to like the NNSA Op Center, or where does that ring?
That rings our, there's a desk that's manned 24 hours that is at the DOE, and that who will respond to that. Is that correct, Dana?
Yes.
I've never had the misfortune of having to call it, so. Okay. Next slide, please. So again, this covers the second course, so we're talking April, May, June. And we just discussed the sign inspection, and I've presented what those signs say. We have additional inspections. We have 3 former building areas, the 371, 371, 771, 881, and 991. And those have a soil cover on top of them. And as a best management practice, we go out and inspect them on a regular basis. We look for, we look for subsidences, depressions, this type of thing. And if those are noted, then we put them into a, basically develop a task order for them and go out and cover them back up, replace the soils on them so that that cover is always maintained. And then the next slide, please. So this is one of the things we do usually on an annual basis. Sometimes formerly it had been done on a semi-annual basis, but we've added some things to the roads, basically to stabilize them. So we only have to do this, or recently we've only had to do it once a year. So this is a picture looking basically towards the west gate, and we go out and we regrade the roads as necessary. We add road base as needed. We have rock crossings that help pull water away from the road and go in a direction that we want them to. And we add a dust suppressant. And we did about, I think about 4.7 miles of roads this year. And honestly, they've never been in better shape. It was a real good project this year. Next slide, please. This is the PLF, and we talk about it often and in every quarter, but I don't know if we've ever had a picture that's given you guys as good of an idea of what it looks like. So this is a recent aerial photograph of the present landfill. Again, we performed a quarterly inspection on May 16th, and that was combined with a weather-related inspection. And then, as George had alluded to earlier, we had some significant rains in the quarter, so we performed additional weather-related inspections on April 27th and May 12th of 2023. Found the landfill to be in good condition, and there were no issues that were identified during those inspections. The next slide, please. Okay, monthly inspections are performed on the original landfill. As you know, a few years back, we did a stabilization project on the landfill, and because of that, we've basically have more robust inspections now, more frequent, instead of quarterly, than monthly, and those will continue until the time that the CDPHE, the EPA, and the DOE all agree that we've managed to stabilize this property. We go back to our quarterly inspections. So those inspections occurred on April 19th, May 23rd, and June 23rd, and then those additional weather-related inspections occurred on April 27th, May 12th, and May 16th. In addition, the DOLF is walked down on a weekly basis, just as a best management best management practice. We have one of our field hands will go out there weekly and walk the entire site looking for signs of erosion, or we have erosional barriers that may get dirt behind them, and he looks to clean those up and keep everything operational. The routine maintenance is performed on the berms, channels, and erosional controls. Again, the landfill is in good condition. We haven't observed any slumping since the effort was made to stabilize it. And then the settlement monuments are surveyed quarterly, and they were within the design parameters for the settlement monuments. And next slide. And that ends my portion. If anybody have any questions? Okay, thank you. Excuse me, Karen.
I also work with RSI, DOE, and I'm the lead ecologist at Rocky Flat, so I'll be talking about ecology. Here is a picture of one of the things that we did during quarter 2 of this year, is we installed willow stakes along some of our drainages to increase the diversity of plants in our habitat. Next slide, please. So we conducted some wildlife monitoring, including nest box surveys. We have over 20 nest boxes out at the site that we installed. Here's a picture of one of them, and they are being used by native species, including tree swallows and house wrens. We also conducted some pre-disturbance bird nest surveys, and that was conducted at the solar pond plume treatment system discharge gallery before the project started, to make sure that we weren't impacting any active nests for the project, and there were none that we noted. We also conducted the prairie dog surveys. We did not note any active towns inside the central operable unit. For our vegetation monitoring, we conducted weed mapping in preparation for treatment, and we also conducted wetland surveys. We look at our wetlands to see if water is present as part of our wetland mapping and mitigation. And then we also conducted vegetation management. As John mentioned, we worked on the SPPTS discharge gallery this year, and so we reseeded it with native grass seed, and we also put out some erosional controls, including the wood straw. I showed you a picture of the willow stakes that we planted, and it's a really easy best management practice that we do on a yearly basis to increase the shrub component of our riparian areas. We also conducted some interseeding. Harry mentioned the OLF. We do have some small areas that we're still, trending towards success in terms of revegetation, but we help along by putting out some more seed and wood straw to increase the cover in those areas. And we also conducted weed control. We have, as we mentioned, I think a couple years ago, we have a new A-listed noxious weed, which is controlled by or managed by the state or deemed for management, and that's the hairy willow herb. So we do focus on that as a high priority weed control. We manage that this year with herbicides. And that's it for ecology. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, please.
Where was the hairy willow herb located?
It is located on the along Woman Creek, across the hillside, across the creek from the OLF, the original landfill. Any other questions?
How are the willows doing?
They're doing well. The willow plantings that we plant, the stakes that we plan to do generally survive. We have about 70% survival rate. So yeah, they're doing pretty well. All right, great. And this is, if you have any more questions, we do have the Q2 report posted on the DOE website. So that's the link at the bottom there, and any more information if you're interested in more information, there's the link to the Rocky Flats website for DOE.
Can I go back to George? If I can ask you a question, George? Sorry. So we had a lot of rain in July and September, and I just wanted to ask you, given what I understood from the spring tour, if there's more water, groundwater flow, then there's more likelihood of nuclides getting disturbed and flowing down the channels and stuff like that.
Of what you're getting disturbed?
If there's more groundwater flow, uranium, plutonium nuclides kind of start to flow a little bit more. Did you see any of that in the months of July, September?
No, we didn't see anything like that. But they actually, just to clarify, uranium and plutonium and americium move differently. Their transport happens differently. So uranium is generally at the site in a dissolved form in the water. So it's more associated with groundwater, comes from our natural geologic materials. Like 70 to 80% of the uranium in our water is naturally occurring. Whereas the plutonium and americium, which is all from plant operations, except for the fallout, there's a little bit of fallout, of course, from nuclear testing. That material wants to stick to soil particles, so it's not dissolved. And so that can move in water when those soil particles move. So, and that happens during more high flow events. But this year actually wasn't remarkably different from a rain standpoint than any other year. I know it felt like it was raining all the time. And what tends to happen, though, of course, in this earlier spring when it's cooler out and the plants aren't quite as robust, it takes less rain to make runoff because the ground is also moister. As we get into summertime, when things are drier, a lot of what times happens that those storm events just wet the surface. They don't really run off. They soak in. So you get, for the same size event, precipitation event, you get different responses in the creeks.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Lynn?
I just think it's interesting what you just said, because, our 2013 flood was really dry. Well, no, it's exactly what you said, because we had, it absorbed for 2 weeks of slow and then more and more rain until it hit critical mass, and then it just...
Right, so we had a few days that got things wet, and then we also had an amount of precipitation that was extraordinary. So at the site we had 8 inches over the, say, 4 days, and so that's why we had so much water. And most of the water that we actually had at the points of compliance came from off-site, especially in Woman Creek. The vast majority of that water originated
west of Highway 93, where near Plainview and the flat areas, Boulder Open Space, and that water came down Woman Creek and through the coup. And then also in Walnut Creek, we have a diversion structure upstream of the central operable unit on the west side that diverts water coming from the east side of Highway 93, but still west of the site. And that diversion structure was topped. It's designed to handle a 100-year event, and September 13th was much more than that. So that water actually went over the diversion structure and came through North Walnut Creek. So we saw that water also on the central operating unit. But we had, only 8 inches of rain on the site, whereas if you look at the foothills, they had, just west of us, 15 to 20 inches over that period.
So in any case, this was a lot of quantity of water moving soils, which
Right, but it's also a lot of quantity of water that also reduces the concentrations. Right, so it's
right.
Yes.
But
so
also, if there's soil in there and the americium and the plutonium are attracted to the soil, it can take it off-site.
It can.
Then it evaporates, and then...
Generally, it gets deposited someplace else. It stays stuck to the soil. So for the September 2013 flood, all of that water went into, in Woman Creek, went into the Stanley Lake Protection Project, the Woman Creek Reservoir. All of that water was contained in that reservoir. It was large enough to contain all of the September 13 flood. Subsequent maintenance done at the Woman Creek Reservoir actually sampled the sediments in the Woman Creek Reservoir, which were a direct, that reservoir captures all of the whatever moves off the federal property, and that the materials showed unremarkable concentrations of plutonium and americium.
They actually showed lower concentrations than when they did the initial sampling before they dug the reservoir.
So you have to remember that we generally know where the low levels of residual PU and AM contamination is at the site. It's generally associated with the 903 pad. When we have soil movement coming on site, the soils up gradient don't have plutonium americium other than fallout type levels. So the source areas aren't everywhere. They're known places that we remediated down to the soil action levels, so that we could protect surface water and have the risk to people below the circle risk levels.
So when these go in the sediment to the bottom of the lake, then
it stays there in most cases.
And not into the water supply?
No, because it stays stuck to the soil particles.
Okay.
And even if it did get into the water supply, when you make drinking water, all that comes out. I mean, when you make drinking water, you remove a lot of the contaminants. I mean, our drinking water supplies have to get run off from parking lots that have oil leaks from people's cars. You have all sorts of things
they
that
get
can
the
be.
soil, and since the americium's attached to the soil, though, they filter it out that way.
In drinking water. Drinking water is, has to meet requirements so that you can drink it.
Right.
And so they look at all those things. Now, of course, the new thing is PFAS. So that's the new thing to understand how that works. Mm-hmm.
Then on the perimeter of the lake.
Excuse me?
You're not really sticking.
I know, but I was offering a lot of having a discussion. So.
On the perimeter of the lake, just to finish, then there's evaporation of the soil, which can liberate the plutonium and americium.
But again, these levels
particles, and then they can go airborne.
They can, but these levels that are in those soils and sediments are not. They don't pose a risk.
Well, for my mom, it was one particle.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, on that subject, if I could, thank you. George, can you explain what a colloid is, where it concerns plutonium's interactions with water? How is it that you can talk about the amount of plutonium being diluted essentially without acknowledging the fact that when plutonium touches water, it spreads into a very thin colloid that encompasses the water tension wherever the water is at the surface.
That's not what I understand. Colloids are small particles, and yes, plutonium consists of small particles. They don't tend to settle as well as the soil, a larger soil particle.
Are you defining colloid the way that I think of it? I think of a
Well,
colloid as something that's spread outward. It's not.
No, that's not the way I
It's a
think
light
of
wave
colloid.
question. Or?
No, it's a finer, it's much finer than like clay,
Right.
much smaller.
Yes.
And plutonium can form colloids, and they can be transported colloidally.
Right.
But at the flats, they studied this back in the 90s and aughts and determined that colloidal transport was not meaningful at Rocky Flats. Colloidal transport of plutonium and americium.
Harry, on any of these signs, do any of these signs say explicitly that movement of material from the central operating unit can be harmful to your health?
No, they do not. And the signs, you got to remember the purpose of them. The signs are there to tell people that it is a federally held site and a little bit about its history, but not much. But the signs are there to prevent people just from inadvertently walking up to the fence and deciding, oh, I want to see what's on the other side of it. It's basically there to tell people, you know, you're welcome to do on the refuge what you'd like within the trail system and everything. But once you get into that queue area, that is a federally held and protected site. And unless, it doesn't say it, but unless you have the proper training, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you're not to go on that site.
Now, can I make this a statement that I know is a bit obvious? I want everyone to hear this. There are no signs around the refuge that say, do not take material from the refuge off the refuge. We know that. And Harry is confirming to me that there is no sign inside of the central operating unit that says, do not take anything from the central operating unit off-site either. Correct?
You'd have to talk to Fish and Wildlife about that. I don't know what's on these
Well,
signs.
you know one half of it at least. The other
Yeah.
half, we assume there's nothing saying that we can't take or should not take, or that it would be a federal crime to take
Well, you're not,
Earth off
you're
of
not
this
even
property.
permitted to be on
Yeah,
it. So
you
why should I
can't even get
address?
in there.
Why you're already
Well, it should
broke
also
the law
state
when you
it.
cross the
Don't
fence
take
line.
it off.
Do you have an additional question, Travis?
No.
Chris, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. I would like to thank Jeanette Hillary for her question about the disposal of material from the central operable unit. And I was wondering if you could please expand on the protocol. Or I believe the answer was that it would be brought to the local landfill and that there's a process, a documentation process for it to be accepted. Is that documentation publicly available? And what is that protocol like, please?
It's an involved protocol. Depends on the mass, the volume of waste. In this case, it was 6 roll-off containers. You're probably familiar, like 40-yard or 40 feet long, 6 feet wide, something like that, and about 6 feet deep. Inside each filled one, there were samples taken from the surface to as deep as they could get. 6 of them on the, each of the 4 corners plus 2 in the center part, and then those were mixed. We analyzed the samples for a variety of constituents. There were samples analyzed for volatile organic compounds, and those were not part of the mixing process because the VOCs can disseminate into the air, and then you have an artificially low result because you have reworked the material and let it evaporate, basically volatilize. We also did metals, we did rads. I don't remember, there were some other things that I do not recall. And we did that sampling for each of the 6 roll-offs. There was 1 or 2 roll-offs that were not all the way full, so we didn't do the full 6 locations, but there were a sufficient number of samples collected and mixed to represent the entire roll-off. And then those samples went to one of the approved laboratories that did the analyses of the soils for the constituents that the waste experts had said we needed to have analyzed. And then those data get reported back to us and assessed by the waste and environmental compliance personnel to determine, is there a need for additional sampling? Does this look representative? Then they are provided, I believe, to the selected landfill. And it's not up to us whether we can put it there. It's up to the landfill whether they will accept it. So we provide the data. The data are then reviewed by the recipient, the landfill that is the preliminary place to deposit the soils. And then, assuming that they okay it, and I don't know if that has happened yet, but assuming that they okay it, we will have those roll-offs hauled down and emptied into the landfill where they tell us, how they tell us, and so on and so forth. And Ryan may be able to give you some more detail because he's involved in the waste aspects.
Well, one thing I'll add to that, and actually that was a very good job, John, is that we also had some radionuclides sampled in that as well, because this is a collection of water passing through here, so it could meet the definition of technically enhanced naturally occurring radioactive material, T-norm, often referred to as. So there is that aspect as well that was sampled for, and then this landfill that we're looking at is an approved, I believe it's a certified landfill for collecting T-norm as well.
What
All
about
right.
PFAS?
Well, hold on, Lynn, could I just ask a follow-up
Yeah.
question, please?
Let's focus not just on random questions we have, like, and speak outwards to people can hear instead of turning your back.
Thank you both very much for clarifying that protocol, and just a couple other clarifying questions, please. How often does this protocol happen, and could you please clarify, is it public information, this documentation, and which landfill is being selected?
Sorry, I'm sorry. You had asked that public documentation. The answer to that, I don't know. How often? It happens as needed. As I mentioned, this particular discharge gallery was the original one installed in 1999, so this is the first time for it. Last year, we replaced the East Trenches Plume treatment system discharge gallery, and to be honest, I don't remember how that went. Ryan, maybe
We didn't generate any waste at that time. We were able to reuse those soils. Basically, these soils weren't conducive for another discharge gallery to be used, and so that's why we had to dispose of them. So basically, you go through this protocol anytime you generate a waste of characterizing it, making a waste determination, and disposing of it appropriately.
All right, good to know, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Any other questions from the board? All right, thank you very much for the presentation. Next item on the agenda is the roundtable.
So let me just jump right into the big picture. You all have it. February is very simple. We're going to elect the officers, adopt a meeting resolution for 2024. We'll have DOE quarterly update, and then we're also going to do the Stewardship Council history. I left April blank. I don't know if we'll meet then. We got to figure that out. That might be a good time to do this retreat that Randy spoke about. So I just left that blank for now, and we'll have some executive committee conversations about that. When we get into June, we receive the audit DOE quarterly update. So you'll see that I put meeting tentative on here, but on the website and on the agendas, it shows the April meeting. So I just wasn't entirely sure how we wanted to proceed. So that's the basic look forward. And any questions? Any thoughts?
I just want to bring up the air quality monitoring piece, and I appreciate you reminding me of that this
No,
morning.
I was sending you a brainwave on that. Okay.
I feel like that's we kind of hit a wall with DOE, and then we had talked about some next steps, but I don't feel like we've made any efforts on those next steps. So I'm wondering if we had kind of created an ad hoc working group, as I recall. Can we bring that back together and really be intentional about thinking about what our next options could be?
So that's really a question for you all, right? Because I'm not involved in the ad hoc working group. So the idea, the charge from the board was, and I can't remember who was involved other than Jefferson County, was you guys meet and then report back. So we've been sort of in a holding pattern, just waiting for you all to report back. That's why it's still under sort of issues to watch, because, you know, we're just sort of letting that conversation mature as it does, and then they'll come back to us. So if there's a time where you say, hey, we've met, we're ready to talk with the board, and then it gets added. You know, then it gets sort of elevated, for lack of a better way to put it.
So how do we make that happen?
I don't know, who was involved in that? Claire, you were sort of,
Devin Schaff with Broomfield, myself, Brandy.
was Jeff co-involved, or am I wrong about that?
You're correct. Andy was involved.
Okay, so.
What, in Westminster?
In Westminster, okay.
Yeah, we did hit a wall.
It'd be good to revisit, you're right.
Yes, definitely.
Do you think you would all be able to do that before the February meeting and then report
I
back?
think we should.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we can meet and talk about how we might move forward. It'd be good if we could meet together with maybe CDPHE and EPA, because that seems to be working well.
Yeah.
And part of the key thing, just so you understand, this is not a stewardship council committee. This is just you all getting together, and we've done this before. Downstream communities would use this model, talking and then coming back and saying, hey, we've been talking, here's where we think we need to go.
Could you explain that distinction that you're making?
The distinction is that since it's not a committee, it doesn't have to, it's not a public event, it's not a public meeting, it's nothing that requires notice. You don't have to go through the formality of the process, because you're meeting individually as governments, not as a stewardship council committee.
She was made.
Yeah.
We can add it as an update in February if you're ready for it then.
Yeah, just let us know.
All right, any items related to this from the communities? All right, so our next item is the executive session. Before I ask for a motion to enter executive session, can you give us an overview of the purpose, Barb?
The executive session is discussing contract and personnel matters related to employment of persons associated with the Stewardship Council, which is eligible under the executive session criteria. So there is language in your meeting agenda that does need to be specifically stated to go into executive session. You need a 2/3 vote. When you're in executive session, you can discuss limited to that topic. You cannot take any action.
Are there any questions from the board on this item? And I'll state the information that I'll ask for first and second. So the discussion I'll ask for a motion for the discussion of Stewardship Council personnel contracts for 2024, authorized pursuant to section 24-6-4024E and E, to determine positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiation and conferencing with the attorney on such matters, and after announcement of the public meeting of the specific topic for discussion and the statutory citation authorizing the executive session, and a 2/3 vote of the president of the board. Is there a motion to accept that item?
Motion associated.
Is there a second?
Second.